Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our virtual NAB tour. My name is Charles Kuralt with 1303 Systems, and I will be your tour guide today. We'd all like to be doing this in Vegas, but instead, we're bringing NAB to you. Today, we'll hear from 1303 Systems with the latest regarding the Crucible Media Asset Management Solution, Caringo with their latest announcements, and Western Digital with what they've been up to. Resources will be available in the tab to the right of your screen. After the presentations, there will be a Q&A session to answer questions you may have. Please type your questions in the Questions tab on the right side of your screen. Now, without further delay, let's turn it over to Chris Cullum from 1303 Systems. Chris?
Thanks, Charles. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. A little bit of background on 1303. We're a solutions provider and systems integrator for media, entertainment, technologies. We've got a lot of combined experience in the space, as well as enterprise IT. And we typically do a really good job of bridging that IT to media and creative world. And so today I'm going to give you guys a little bit of demo of the latest in our media asset management solution, Crucible. And so I'll go ahead and share my screen. We'll do this live, and I hope everything works, right? So here you have a login page for Crucible, just simple username and password. New users can register. Logging in is as simple as clicking the button. And so what we've done here is try to create a really media-centric interface. We don't want anything overly complicated. Just display what's there, make things easy to find. From a technology perspective, we can deploy on-prem, hybrid cloud, or full cloud. All of those things are native. We've done a good job of making sure that any deployment scenario you may have, we can meet. And so here we go. Interface, like I said, nice and clean, media-centric. We can handle, basically any media type, as well as generic files, Word documents, Excel, things like that, which becomes useful for if you have producer scripts and things like that. Even those Word documents are indexed, and actually the contents become searchable as well. And so, easy tour. Search over here on the left. You can search for myself. You can see how quick and responsive that is. Obviously, we can do keyword searches, but we can do some more complicated things as well, like that. Kevin Hart, one of my more favorite comedians. This becomes the view for all medias and file types, and so whether or not it's a video and we have a proxy to play back, or an image, that's what that looks like. You can get some information on what happened with this item. In the Jobs tab, we can see when it was imported, if it was transferred into another format. We can do that all from this page as well. So if you wanted a, ProRes 422 version of this particular file, it's easy to submit and make. On the right-hand side, we have what we consider descriptors. A little bit different, in our opinion, than just straight metadata. Metadata to us seems to be more, information about the file, technical things. For us, business metadata we call descriptors because we think it really more describes the item. And so those are easy to edit, all customizable, all custom to your environment. This one's just kind of a generic demo one, but if we want to do something like that, easy to save and close. Of course, all that becomes instantly searchable. In fact, if we do a search for, Stormy, we get that item back. This wonderful video from Charles, I believe, in wonderful sunny Florida, which not on this day. But, like I said, easy to search, easy to do advanced searches as well. And so we can select particular descriptor fields if we wanted, and create a very advanced search, which we can actually then save. And so if it's something you do often, we can come back to that and view those. And so, for instance, this Porsche one, well, at least we have cute, errors, when things don't work. Apparently I have no more Porsche footage, which is very sad. But again, go back to Chris, and there we go. Me on a lawnmower as a child in the 80s, love it. Ingest, getting items in, also very easy. So we have an ingest menu here. We can browse storages, which could be, anything that mounts to a local file system, anything with the S3 protocol like Caringo, which we utilize often for archives, and things like that, although we could host media there and import it from there as well. We've got some good integration with those guys. And so that's easy enough to import, select. We can attach those descriptors if we wanted. We can monitor these jobs as they happen to see, where they're at in progress. Blue in progress, green checkboxes for good, red checkboxes for something went wrong. And then when we come back here, we'll see these, and those thumbnails will populate as those jobs finish. So back to an item. We can actually also do some nice sharing here. So we can create a share for external users. So if you have a client or someone who wants to view footage, but you don't want them to access everything, you can actually do an email list or an email domain, number of days available, the maximum number of views, and whether or not they can actually download that item or view and download. So that comes in handy for review and approval and things like that, and keeps them from potentially being able to do anything else that you don't want them to do. We also have a wonderful annotation tool for marking, ins and outs and notes and things like that. So again, another great producer tool for marking up footage for editors and letting them know what pieces of the story you want. And so these show up here, and if we go to a different point in time code, we can always go back to that point by clicking our little location button, and we can edit and delete these as well. From there, we can, there's the items I imported. So we have the concept of bins and collections. Bins are kind of like a private folder to help you kind of collect assets for yourself. And so, these show up here. You can see these bins from our Minnesota hike. And then additionally, we have collections. So if we wanted to, let's say we collected a bunch of footage and we want to share it with everyone, we can actually convert that to a collection. And then that would be available for everyone's viewing. So we can see those over here. There's our hike. And so now if another user logs in, they can actually see this as well. And of course, we've got some great integration with some NLE tools, whether or not that's Final Cut or Final Cut Pro 10, sorry, or Premiere. We have Premiere Panel. We have a little helper app that will work with Final Cut Pro 10 to open these items in there as a collection, if we wish. There we go. We can also do things like Reveal in Finder. So if you're on a Mac, or Reveal in Explorer if you're on Windows. You can also hide things from search. So if you want, there's some things that you don't want someone to see, we can do that. Kind of play with permissions. On the right, we can do some custom facets. So again, you can see how responsive that is to say, hey, show me all of my documents, show me all of my audio, show me all my video. These can be basically any descriptor that we set, but for now we just kind of have some basic, height, width, and media type. So show me all of my video that is 4096 minutes, and there we go. So again, fast, responsive, easy to use, and a lot of great additional tooling to help with workflows, including, like I said, archiving. So you can create archiving rules to then send to perhaps an object store, something with the S3 protocol. We get the Caringo guys we love to death, love their product. Integrates very well, tends to be a very good archive for us. And those actions just happen in this menu. So the other nice thing is, being a US-based development team, we like to make things bespoke for clients. We don't really feel like a one-size-fits-all fits everyone. And so while our licensing model is subscription and may seem like a a normal subscription that you subscribe to. We also like doing a lot of custom work and making things work for you. So if you have some unique challenges, we'd love to hear about them. Love to see what we can do to help you out. And that's going to be my quick 10 minutes on this. Would love to dive in with you guys more one-on-one if you want later. But for now, Charles, back to you.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much for that. And again, everybody, if you have any questions, please feel free to jot them down in the questions from the audience tab on the right side of your screen there, and we'll get to those. Moving onward, let's go to Adrian Herrera with Caringo to update us on what they have been up to. Adrian.
Thanks, Charles. Let me go ahead and take over the slides here. So, as Chris was mentioning, you need an accessible archive to be able to access your content when you need it, and that's really what Caringo is all about. We're object storage pioneers, and for those of you who may not be familiar with object storage is really the enabling storage technology for all cloud storage solutions out there. Object storage is what you would deploy on-prem to really provide storage services within your own data center. We're one of the organizations that have been doing it for a very long time. We were founded in 2005. Our product is market hardened. We have a number of customers that you may have heard of. We focus on media entertainment, but we also have customers in the high-performance computing, research, federal government space, and pretty much every industry out there. Overall, we're all about making your archives instantly and securely accessible. You can stream and share files directly from the storage layer, which is why we plug into asset management solutions like Crucible, and we'll go into that in a bit. We enable multi-site collaboration, so it's very easy to send assets to different locations, different Swarm deployments, or different areas. We're really great at tenant management, or Swarm is really great at tenant management, and by that, I mean you can split up storage resources and give them to different applications, different people, different business units, even different customers, depending on what you want to do. All that's built in, that functionality is built in, that multi-tenant functionality is built in. And we're very good at compliance and protection. We're always continuously protecting your data, and we do have some compliance features like Worm and legal hold built in. Those aren't that important to the media entertainment vertical, but we do have that built in. Overall, we make your archives accessible by providing S3-enabled private cloud storage, and storage really that you control. When you take a look at your options, your storage options for your archive, you have cloud storage, something like an S3 or Wasabi. You have tape, although I think now with everything going on in the world these days, people are realizing that they need their archives more accessible than tape. I think a lot of people are struggling with sending someone into the data center and getting the right tape and loading that into the library these days. And you also have object storage, and those are really your three options for archive storage, for economical archive storage. And the reason you would pick object storage is really contained on this slide. Everything from an object storage perspective is really complete and software-based. So really any object storage solution out there will run on any x86 server hardware, and you can scale. And most object storage solutions focus on automated management. At Caringo, that's something that we really pride ourselves on. We have organizations out there where just a part-time resource is managing 50 petabytes of storage. That's a lot of infrastructure that they're managing with a single resource. Object storage, the best-of-breed solutions out there scale, and they get faster as they grow. And of course, there's continuous protection. This is key. We'll go into this in a bit when we go into workflows. And of course, we plug into all your existing workflows. As Chris mentioned, they're using the S3 protocol to talk directly to Swarm. We also support HTTP and NFS, and we have a drive product that mounts as a drive, so there's lots of different ways to plug Caringo Swarm into your workflows. And I just wanted to give everyone an example of a few workflows just so you can see where we fit in. The first one, And I think the one that's most appropriate for this webinar is, we act as a tape replacement. Tape, as far as a cold archive solution, is great. It's always going to be your most economical option, but data accessibility, asset accessibility is always going to be an issue. Here, with object storage, you can see it's instantly accessible. It's accessible over the internet, over the web, over your network. The native interface for our solution is HTTP. So once you have that content on the storage solution on Swarm, you can easily provide internal secure access. You can provide secure external file sharing. There's a lot you can do. So we would plug into your metadata controller, your HSM, your asset manager, whatever you have, and we would bring all of that hassle-free management, scalability, accessibility, and searchability to your organization, and of course, the ability to manage multiple tenants and multiple applications. From a video streaming or streaming and video on demand perspective, object storage is really powering origin storage for most major streaming solutions out there. You saw the Disney Plus logo on our logo slide. They're using us for archiving their content, and anytime there's a miss, they go and grab data from the archive. And that's, object storage is really good at that. For content delivery, a lot of organizations, if you're not getting hit with a ton of requests, like thousands of requests per minute, the right object storage solution could enable your video on demand service from a delivery perspective and from an origin perspective, and that's what you see here. The parts in the purple are really the value that Swarm brings from the streaming and video on demand workflow. Now, the third workflow is VR and backup to cloud. This is also important from an archive perspective. You want to make sure your archives are always continuously protected. We do continuously protect your data and your assets when they're on Swarm. But another option that you can have if you have maybe an off-site requirement is you can send either a part of that content or those assets or all of them to Amazon S3 or to Wasabi, and you instantly have an off-site copy. So if for some reason one of your data centers was to go away, maybe it was inaccessible or something like that, you can go ahead and spin up another Swarm instance in another data center, and everything can be rebuilt. So it's really built for disaster recovery, backup to cloud, and you get an instant DR site there. Then we get into what we would be showing at NAB, and we would have shown our appliance line. We completely re-architected our Swarm server appliances. Just a little info there. We are a software company. You can install us on any x86 server hardware. But what we found for a lot of media entertainment organizations and those that deal in digital video is, they really liked an all-in-one appliance. And that's really what we came out with. We can start very small. In fact, we could start from an appliance perspective with the smallest configuration in the industry at 168 terabytes raw. That's from an object storage perspective. This is true native object storage. It isn't a NAS or a filer. And then you can scale from there. So it's highly flexible. You have lots of different deployment options, and of course, all of these plug into Crucible. So if anyone's interested, you can definitely follow up with 1303, and they have access to all this information and can help you size the right solution. And the reason we went and re-architected the server line was to make it easier to deploy all the features, all the value that we have built over the last 15 years into our software platform. And if you take a look at all those features, it's really about making your archives rapidly accessible and adding a distributed protection to your assets. So we do have features like partial file restore integrated. We have features like parallel uploads via any HTML5 enabled browser. integrated, so if you do have remote or distributed staff, they can easily upload to the storage layer. Again, we make it really easy to securely share and stream internally or externally. That'll either be through an application like Crucible or directly from the storage layer itself. And again, with distributed or with backup and DR to S3, you can easily satisfy any sort of remote data protection requirement. So let's say for some reason you need to stand something up or send a copy of something offsite for protection purposes overnight, you can easily do that with us. And that's pretty much it. If anyone's interested, they can email info@caringo.com or follow up directly with 1303, and they could get you all the information you need. I'll pass it back to you, Charles.
Thank you, Adrian. Moving media around and working collaboratively these days is very important, especially in these challenging times. If Caringo's not on your target right now and on your radar, it really should be. So if you have any questions for the Caringo guys, please feel free to ask those in the questions tab. So now let's bring this workflow together with the latest from Western Digital. We've got Seth Cohen with us, and then he'll hand it off to Brian Bashaw as well. Seth?
Thanks a lot, Charles, and thank you, Adrian, as well. Again, my name's Seth Cohen. I'm Platform Sales Manager for Western Digital, with my focus being on media entertainment, something I've been involved with for the past 15 years. I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to speak to you about all of our platforms. We have a complete portfolio of storage platforms designed to perform under the most demanding performance and capacity needs. In there's JBODs, JBOFs, just a bunch of flash, and storage servers. Given the amount of time here, one of the more exciting things we're going to talk about at NAB was a product called OpenFlex that allows our storage to disaggregate from compute, enable applications to share a common pool of storage. I'm going to turn it over now to Brian Bashaw, who's got a great radio voice. He'll be very entertaining, and he'll go over the rest. He'll go over this product line for you. Thanks a lot, and look forward to working with everyone on the phone call. And thank you for your time today. Brian.
All right. Thanks for setting the expectations high there, Seth. Like Seth said, I mean, one of the things we were really looking forward to NAB for was introducing you guys to this new approach to deploying data storage in really any environment. It's a thing we've been talking about for a little while. We introduced this sort of ecosystem, if you will, back in the fall of 2018. So it's been in the works for a little while. It's actually real these days. And before I go too far in it, I think it's if you take anything away from the prior presenters and my session as well, that a lot of what we're talking about here is really this sea change that already happened, where a lot of people were moving data to the cloud, or even workflows to the cloud, the public cloud. And now people are sort of trying to figure out how to bring those economics and those processes in a unified way back on premises, so they can simplify their processes, their workflows, whether it's on-prem or in the public cloud, are more or less the same. We heard from the folks at Caringo about the idea of leveraging a well-known archival type transport in the S3 API for getting data to that archive layer in the cloud, and the Crucible MAM for being able to send in and receive data from that. So what we want to talk to you about now is this ability to take that up the stack, so to speak, and deploy more real-time like workflows on-prem, but do so in a way that mimics cloud services. So we sort of watched this transformation happen. It's sort of an interesting luxury we have at WD. But by the way, a lot of people on the call may not even know who WD is unless you've wandered through a Fry's or a Best Buy recently. But we're kind of like that other company whose slogan was, "You may not know who we are, but we make the things that you use better." We're that same sort of people. We're in practically everything you own that has any sort of data storage in it. But we have an interesting seat at the table where we get to see how people are using these devices and where they're going, what sort of access patterns they have, how they fail when they send them back to us, what was actually wrong with it. And one of the things that we started picking up on was that hyper-converged infrastructures, where people pretty much are, I think, today, are largely underutilized. There's resources that are sitting there dormant, or, we've kind of coined the phrase dark flash. People are paying top dollar per gigabyte for flash storage in a hyper-converged box that they may leave stranded and never actually use those resources. So, the sea change is happening now at the primary tier. It's called composable disaggregated infrastructure. So we like to call it anyway. And in that composable world, this idea that we start separating these resources, these bare metal resources, out of that server and make them be consumable entities on some kind of a fabric. It's kind of the genesis of what we wanted to go to. It's a really long lead up to our story today. So we're not the only ones that saw this, though. We have to make this kind of work, there's multiple pieces that you need. Just like if you're in a public cloud environment, those physical assets exist, but it still comes down to how you choose to provision those. And whether that's an interactive admin process or if it's an automated process or whatever it is, there's still another element to that. And we know that to make it work from our perspective, we needed friends in the playground. And so one of those friends that we have is a company called Liquid that provides an ability to orchestrate and organize these resources on this fabric. And this is their slide that they talk with their customers about. And it looks a whole lot better than my slide, but it tells the exact same story of this transition that people are starting to execute, where the costs associated with maintaining separate tiers of dedicated things to be part-time service providers is just, doesn't make any sense anymore. If we can make that more dynamic, then it makes things a whole lot more affordable to even use more cutting-edge type technology. So, this is a slide that actually Gartner produced based on some stuff that they had done with Liquid. So it's not just us saying it, it seems to be a universally accepted thing. So what does this look like? Really, if we think about a server today, for any of you that are really familiar, intimate with the hardware level of a server, there's that universal interconnect inside of that server, and nowadays it's a hot topic, especially as processors are becoming more and more scalable. The number of PCIe lanes that they can service inside of that server is sometimes now the bottleneck. Some of our customers are actually telling us they've got idle CPU time because they're still trying to organize data that lives on NVMe storage in a server. The processor is powerful enough, they don't have enough data throughput between the processor and those NVMe targets to actually keep the thing busy. So right out of the gate, there's a chance to just expand onto some other fabric, an ability to leverage this high-speed storage in a way that feeds those processors a little bit better. And now if we start thinking about that a little bit further down the rabbit hole, what other resources are in those servers? How many GPUs can I put in a server? How many GPUs would I put in there if I had unlimited slots? What about FPGAs? Things that are purpose-built. I don't know how many of you are familiar, and this is the joy of doing a one-way webinar. I can't see if you're nodding or smiling or ignoring me. But how many people have looked at things like computational storage elements for doing things like real-time transcode at the edge, like right at the capture device, being able to transcode that, put it off the high-speed storage, and then potentially even offload it directly to something like a Caringo where it's sitting on an archive, immediately protected. As all a function of something that happens at the edge, those could be accelerated with these FPGA devices. So our interest obviously lies more tightly coupled with that storage, that flash storage side. And we actually do draw hard disk drives here, mainly for that computational storage element as well. There's some interesting stuff that we're working with some people on that Seth and I can dig into some other time when we have more of that time. But all of this is going to be delivered, at least through WD's eyes, as something called NVMe over fabrics. I encourage you to look it up. If you want to know more, I'm happy to talk to you about it sometime. But the idea is really, this is where things get different than the traditional NAS and SAN that we used to know from the past, where, yes, there was always storage that sat on a network of some kind. Today I use the word fabric, but it was always a network of some kind. The difference is now we're taking those parallel elements of NVMe and the low latency elements of NVMe, and we're putting it out to a fabric in a different way. We're not trying to gain performance out of something like NFS that was never intended to deliver performance. We are instead taking the performance that's expected of 65,000 parallel send and receive queues for an NVMe target and putting an Ethernet wire in between the target and the initiator and still maintaining that parallelism. So it's a different beast than what you may be used to with a traditional NAS or SAN environment. So I kind of go back at this point to our friends over at Liquid, because for us, NVMe over Fabric is an Ethernet environment. But, you know, if what I said is true, and if what Gartner says is true, this idea of these elements that exist on a fabric, Ethernet's not going to always be the right answer. In some cases, you still absolutely need the latency and speed you get from a PCIe interconnect. And so in that way, Liquid comes to the table with not only an Ethernet fabric, but a PCIe-based fabric that can, you know, be that sort of, you know, dogs and cats living together, providing this nice, no need to commit to one fabric or another. Use the right fabric type for the right workflow. Deploy those elements on the fabric that you need them on, and leverage their composability engine to index all of these resources and compose servers, much like you're probably used to in a virtual machine environment, but instead in a bare metal way. So an example use case of that might be, you know, let's imagine I've got some sort of a large GPU-based render farm that's sitting in the data center. It's idle because I'm still waiting for artists to actually submit some work. So in the parallel to that idle system, I've got artists sitting at their workstations, which also have very powerful GPUs, that are busy during the day, and then those guys all go home at some point. And now they've got an idle workstation that's got idle bare metal resources on it as well. In a traditional hypervisor environment, those are isolated resources. I can't leverage them independent of what people are actually doing throughout the day. However, if they were all already on this high-speed fabric, and they were all already aware of each other through this composition layer, well, then I could actually deploy in an automated way. It's totally, you know, I can make this an automated deployment. So where I could have it set up to where when folks show up in the early part of the day, the workstation they're sitting at is a composable resource that has been composed to meet the workflow of those hours of the day. And when they're done, those resources get checked back into the spares pool, so to speak. And when I need to submit a job, I can go out on the fly and determine how many free GPUs I have and build that system on the fly, just like you would in a public cloud. But now I can do it all on-prem. So it's really, really powerful what they're offering. It's a pretty fantastic thing. You should reach out to them as well if you want more information on that. Swinging that pendulum back over to us on the hardware side, on the storage side anyway, as Seth mentioned, we have you know, a wealth of products we'd love to tell you about. These that you see on the screen are just the ones that are participants in this composable disaggregated infrastructure story that we have. Some of those are storage specific, like that F3100 E3000 are the big workhorses of this environment. That Data 24F is something a little bit more you know, traditional in terms of data storage that you're used to. It looks very familiar. We've even gone out and acquired a networking company, a network ASIC design company, to optimize this throughput and latency experience all the way from the host. We want to take ownership of all of that as much as we can, and ultimately use these things as a foundation for an open framework. We use the word open a lot when we talk about this, and it's not just us using the word because it sounds cool. It's we created an API that hardware manufacturers can use to advertise their resources. Today we use GPUs and FPGAs and NVMe and all that fun stuff, but tomorrow somebody's going to create something that we also want to compose, and we don't know what it is yet. But right now, in addition to coming up with that idea and creating the product, they also have to figure out how they're going to advertise its services. We wanted to provide a unified framework, use our position in the market to advertise that framework, and we've done so. We submitted it to the Open Compute project. If you go to opencompute.org, look at the contribution section for OpenFlex or for Western Digital, and you'll get free of charge, license-free, our software development kit, our API guide. If you want to write some code, knock yourself out. It is a fantastic experience, and it's all free. If you want to bend your own metal and build a device, we submitted the design schematics for all of the hardware that we're creating to SNIA. Those FFF numbers that you see there on the bottom of that slide, those are the actual reference diagrams. You want to build your own device free of charge from us, knock yourself out. There's no cost to you other than your engineering. We just want people to start building the ecosystem. So we're trying to enable this. We're getting some success with some partners. Again, give Seth and I a call sometime, and we'll walk you through the broader ecosystem there. If we kind of swing this again back, you can kind of picture, I'm going back and forth here quite a bit, but if you picture our friends over at Liquid again, what a traditional design like this might look like is we assume that you're probably not a greenfield environment, that you're just building something from scratch waiting for us to show up with this wonderful thing. We expect you probably already have some investment in compute. You probably have some investment in GPU. We want to be able to let you leverage those resources, and our friends over at Liquid let you do that. You can absolutely install their software onto your bare metal servers as they exist today. Today they show a handful of one-use servers all connected to an Ethernet-based fabric, as they probably already are now. And now, instead of those being isolated resources, they can all advertise themselves to that Liquid command center. And if we were to augment that environment with some additional NVMe flash, or maybe even a dedicated GPU chassis that sits on that fabric, well, then the Liquid command center can do a simple broadcast across that network and see all of those composable elements and offer you now a series of resources that can be manipulated into whatever hardware environment you need to satisfy that workflow. Things now begin to be checked in and out of that resource pool, again, much like you're used to in any kind of a public cloud type of an environment. If we were to kind of spin this around a little bit and start putting some performance numbers and some capacity numbers to it, you can also see that these are not small. These are not insignificant in terms of overall performance. We're talking about, in that one little 3U chassis from Western Digital, almost a little over, rather, a half a petabyte of NVMe storage. That's significantly dense in my experience. And not only is it dense from a capacity experience, but from an overall performance profile. We can deliver around 120 gigabytes a second of sustained throughput out of that 3U chassis. We can give you 22 million 4K random IOPS out of that 3U chassis. Now, no single workflow probably needs that, but when we start talking about the aggregation of all of those other either existing x86 servers or those disaggregated GPU chassis or any of these other elements that come into play, now all of a sudden that OpenFlex chassis becomes a very nice pool of not only capacity, but pool of IOPS and raw throughput to just add in. And it all goes back to that initial challenge statement of, I've got NVMe or I've got storage in those servers that I can't share, that I paid for because that's the SKU that I got from my vendor, and there's just idle, dormant, dark flash sitting there doing nothing for me, that I paid whatever dollar per gigabyte I did 3 years ago when I bought it. Let me disaggregate that. Let me ratchet your efficiency up. I'll deliver extreme performance through that, and I'll have Liquid be the guys that present all that to you. So with that, I think I'm just about out of time. I'll sum all that up just by talking about, the idea of the future data center on-prem is it's coming. We're not the only ones doing it. It's not just Liquid either. We've seen a number of other vendors that are creating interesting devices and interesting software approaches to manage this. But overall, we think the vision of the future, I think the data center of the future is going to be no physical systems. They will be all, I have the word virtual here, but they're not even virtual in the sense of a hypervisor as much as they are virtual in terms of I have no tin wrapped around a single collection of CPU memory, et cetera. Each one of these elements is a unique service provider on a fabric without hierarchy, without dependence on one another. They are all simply advertisable resources as peers on that fabric, ready to help you accomplish whatever your task is. So with that, I'm going to shut up, go back on mute, hand that over to our gracious host.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Seth. A lot of information there, and it's really, really, really helpful, I'm sure. If you have any questions you want to get in, go ahead and get those into us at this time. If you look at the attachments and links tab on the right side of the screen, you will see several pieces of these presentations and some product information that's downloadable as well. We don't currently have any questions at this time, but all of the contact information is up on the screen right now for Caringo, for 1303 Systems, and Western Digital. If there aren't any questions, I will just go ahead and do our closing here. Just want to thank everybody for joining us today. We appreciate your time, especially in these challenging times. Please feel free to contact any of us anytime with any questions you may have. This presentation will continue to be available at the same link you used to attend, so you can go back and view this over and over again. Have a great day, stay healthy, and stay safe.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks, everyone.